So, welcome to this Untitled Regional Council Extraordinary Meeting. Almighty God, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Please guide our hearts and minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today to the advancement and true welfare of our people and of Australia. Amen. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past and present. The Untitled Regional community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture. We all share the beauty of this land, the richness of its soil and the uniqueness of its wildlife. Let us walk together in the footsteps of love and understanding. While valuing diversity, let us share the same hope for a better future. Now, this meeting has been audio and video recorded, and recordings of the non-confidential part will be made available on the internet. And there's no one else here. Just ask that mobile phones be turned silent, please. Thank you. Now, I have apologies from Councillors Bailey, Murat and Tiley. Any others? No. Diane's, was Councillor Gray is supposed to be here? Are there any declarations of interest? Right, now we have your say. We have in front of us item 6.1, recommendation that Council note the report on the presentation of the audited annual financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2018. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Witters. Councillor Robinson. Now, what I'd like to do is suspend standing orders so we can have James to give us a talk. Could I have a mover, a seconder, please? Councillor Robinson, Councillor Witters. All those in favour? Carried. So I'd like to welcome James Schumar. James has done the auditing on this report in conjunction with Kelly's assistance, I presume. So, James, would it be all right if you could outline some of the issues in the report and be open to any questions, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, councillors, management of Armidale Regional Council. My name is James Suguma. I'm a director with the Auditor General's Office, New South Wales. I'm the delegated officer for the audit of Armidale Regional Council. I thank the council for providing me this opportunity to present my report on the conduct of the audit on the financial statements. So we have planned, conducted, completed, and issued those independent auditors' reports on time as communicated in my engagement letter. The good news, Mr. Mayor, is that I issued clean independent auditors' reports, which is a positive, which means we don't have any significant material misstatements uncorrected or corrected. And the financial statements complied with the accounting standards, Australian accounting standards, and the requirements of the Local Government Act. The accounting records, as and when we required, were provided to us on a timely basis, and we received full cooperation and the necessary information to conduct the audit. Apart from the financial audit, Mr. Mayor, the Auditor General is required to present a report to the Parliament on the audit of all 138 councils for 30 June 2018. And that report would be a summary of all activities across 138 councils. And there would be some comparisons in terms of meeting performance expectation, fit for future ratios, we would include summaries of those in the report as we did in the 30 June 2017 report. We do not intend to mention specific names of the councils unless there are some specific matters or very significant matters. For example, we would definitely mention the name of Botany Council because of the significance of the fraud involved in that one. Otherwise, we do not plan to mention any of the names. There would be general comparison and general comments on the opportunities for improvement. We also plan to have a data visualization tool like what we did last year. Not sure whether you had an opportunity to look at that last year. It is a 6 minutes kind of a tool which gives you any summary of any councils in terms of the financial position or in terms of meeting those ratios. And also we had a very brief video summary, and I would encourage you to please have a look at it because it's again some like 5 minutes, and it actually tells you in terms of a visual format so that you could compare and listen to what our comments are on those councils. The Auditor General is also required by the legislation to perform the performance audits. And we did a few last year. We did some common performance audit across 140 councils last year, and it was summarized and published. And for this year, the Auditor General has selected 3 main themes. One is the waste management, how councils are managing the waste management. The other one was the impact and the positives and the challenges on the amalgamation. And the third one was on how council plan and conduct its activities. My main part and responsibility, Mr. Mayor, is the report on the conduct of the audit, which is a statutory requirement under the Local Government Act. And I'm required to issue this report on under Section 417 of the report. And this report, the Local Government Act prescribes a few areas and leaves it to the auditor to present to the council whatever areas we thought is appropriate. And I have actually included probably 5 key items. It's just very briefly talking about the income statement, balance sheet, and the cash position, and the cash flows. And the last was the fit for profit ratio, the performance ratios. You may have seen this before. I've just got a very high-level summary on the income statement. The council turned around its profit from last year of 16.3 million to a negative 3.2 million, and the rates and annual charges, whilst it increased because of the rate increases, there was a significant decrease in terms of the grants received. There was a 15 million grant received for the amalgamation, which did not repeat this year. That really contributed a significant fall in the revenue, and that translated into a loss at the year end. So increased expenses with a fall in revenue contributed to a 19.5 million reduction in the operating result for this year. Briefly talking about the balance sheet, Mr. Mayor, is that the current assets has decreased purely because of some of those funding received were applied for the amalgamation expenses. And the non-current assets increased largely due to fair value reassessments as required by the accounting standards, and also some additions during the year. So that gives an overall increase of total assets, 17.1 million dollars, and a similar increase on the liabilities, 2.6 million, and overall the net assets increased, largely attributable to the changes in the fair values of the assets. And the liabilities increased mainly the increase in payables at the year end. Sorry. Talking about the cash positions, the cash and investments decreased, as indicated earlier, because of the expenses relating to amalgamation and the expenses from the amalgamation grant received. And that was reflected in the drop on the cash and investments balances. The statement of cash flows, overall, it's reported a positive cash flows. However, the cash flows on investing activities decreased in 2018 as the planned capital budgets and some of those renewals may have not happened and probably will happen in future years. And the financial activities cash flows due to the loan proceeds, actually. Okay, now these are the 7 ratios which OLG put together just to assess the performance of the councils. And they expect to just monitor these ratios. And these ratios are specifically designed to the council's future, fit for future kind of purposes. And out of the 7 ratios, the council met five of those ratios, which is satisfactory. And there were 2 ratios council did not meet, and there are some specific circumstances why it did not meet those 2 ratios. And meeting a ratio in 1 year is not kind of a certainty for meeting the same ratio in the next year. So depending on the transactions, meeting the ratios will change every year. And for example, if you look at the operating performance ratio, which actually measures, how much of operating revenue you are generating to survive and manage your expenses. For this year, the ratio is negative, and the council did not meet it, largely due to the drop in the grant revenue received this year. So there's a significant drop from $15 million, which was received last year. That did not get repeated this year. So that has impacted your kind of a revenue stream, and that directly impacted your performance ratio. The on-source operating revenue ratio, the council did meet that, so there was no concern in terms of the ratio which increased from last year to this year. And this on-source operating revenue ratio, again, just focuses on the ability of the council, how much it generates itself rather than relying on some external funding or grant, and whether they can manage its own expenses. So that is a positive sign that ratio is being met there. Unrestricted current ratio is the way how much council, whether it will be able to meet its short-term liabilities as and when it falls due. And council met the ratio, and there is sufficient liquid fund to meet immediate liability. So it is, again, satisfactory situation. The debt cover ratio, again, council was successful in meeting this. The ratio, while it decreased due to the operating result, the council did not generate too much of cash inflow from the operating results, so that has impacted, and it decreased the ratio this year. However, it met the ratio for this year. The rates and annual charges cover ratio is a measure of how the council collects its revenue, the rates, notices, and charges, whether it's collecting on time, and does it collect the percentage of the whole revenue notices. So this 10% is the kind of a benchmark set by Office of the Local Government, and the council's balances are 7% this year, which indicates 93% of the rates and annual charges have been collected on time, which again is a more than satisfactory position on that one. Cash expense cover ratio is, again, council has met it, and this again gives assurance that the cash balance is sufficient to meet the immediate expenses, and council can survive for at least 13 months, even if it does not get any more cash injection. So that's what it indicates. 13.8 months it will be able to run with the existing cash balances. The building and infrastructure renewal ratio, Mr. Mayor, this is a ratio which is, we do not audit. Is number one. Number two is a complex ratio. The calculation is a bit complex. And thirdly, it expects continuous acquisition and renewals of assets to match the depreciation and write-off of the assets. So it is one of the ratios most councils experience to meet this. So I can actually share that last year you can see a large number of councils did not meet this ratio, and I expect it would be very similar to this year as well. So once we have a report, we will probably just have a highlight of how many councils did not meet this ratio. We are talking to OLG just to modify this ratio and make it a bit easier for us to audit and the readers to understand this one as well. We're just continuously talking to them. For 2019, Mr. Mayor, there are a few areas the Audit Office has identified based on the audit observations this year. There has been significant gaps we noted in many councils, not necessarily the regional council, in terms of the access control and the security of the finance system and the database. And we will be focusing and probably doing some more work just to provide some recommendation to protect sufficiently in terms of the data and the cyber security as well. We continue to work with the councils and with OLG to improve the reporting timetable. Right now, the deadline is 31 October. We are encouraging councils to probably try to get the financial reporting finished earlier. That's again another project we are doing there. The landfill site accounting has been another area which we found a variety of different accounting treatments being adopted by various councils, and we're trying to bring some consistency on that for next year. The Crown land is another popular, or probably something like you may have heard that, is that a large number of councils have not recognized the Crown land they've used, and that is another area we are working with Treasury and the Crown in terms of the land which they believe that being assigned to the council and whether that has been booked into the financial statement. So we will probably continue to work on that for next year. Asset management is relating to the last ratio, the asset renewal ratio, as I discussed on that one. And we will continue to work with the councils to get some comfort in terms of the oversight by the audit committee and also from the internal audit. So that's another focus area. We're trying to get some efficiency out of that process through the internal audit and also the oversight conducted by the Audit and Risk Improvement Committee. So Mayor, that's probably I just wanted to share with you. And if there are any questions, I can probably respond to it. I'll be more than happy to do that.
Thanks, James. And yeah, I'll put it to the councillors. What if you want to ask questions? Councillor Withers. James, you just have to turn your. Yep.
Oh, excuse me. My question was around I think it was about halfway through with 13.8 months being able to run on its. I think that it was 13. It was on the right hand side. It's a slide on the right hand side. That one. Is that from June or is that from now?
From June.
Yeah.
From 1 July.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Councillor Gletley.
With the grants funding from this year, is that a normal thing that it'll be up and down? It all depends what you get money for and what you don't, as far as it goes. But I saw that the grants, in comparison to the previous year, we were right down. So is Is that a council matter, or it's just the nature of the beast sort of thing? What's the go with that?
Largely discretionary funding, so it is no kind of a projected or predictable funding. Particularly this kind of amalgamation grant is totally discretionary, so it is common for all organizations, not necessarily the councils, even for departments like health and police and all that. It keeps changes.
Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, my question was just if you could perhaps elaborate a little bit on the effect of the depreciation on our failure to meet, I think, the one of those. Yeah. I've got another question too. Yeah, so my question's about that, sorry. And also if you had any comments, James, about is there any room to move in relation to that depreciation sort of impacting on that ratio?
So, Mr. Mayor, depreciation is a requirement. It's a requirement of the accounting standard, and also the accounting standards are part of the legal framework, so it's a law as well. In terms of reflect the wear and tear of assets, every organization has to reflect what's the fall in value of the assets and the usage. So not depreciating or reducing the depreciation will be a breach in the accounting standards. The objective of depreciating and maintaining a quality of the asset, and if the asset is properly maintained, there's one way. I'm just suggesting one thing. This is one way I've seen some of the organization, how they manage the depreciation expense, is to have a regular maintenance program so that the useful life of that asset is extended. So instead of having an asset for 40 years, and if you have a good quality asset planning and maintenance, the useful life of the asset can be extended to 50 years or 60 years. So the annual charge would be the value divided by the number of years of usage. So there is a small room to make it a bit efficient. Against that argument is that you may have to spend money on the maintenance. So obviously there's no one way of getting the benefit out of that. So I'm sorry, that depreciation is kind of it's almost like a very strict requirement, and it does not give any kind of flexibility for accountants to overrule the accounting standards. So that's a challenge, actually.
My other question is on the same ratio, and that is, I suppose it's just a comment that I would be hoping you might take on board and perhaps, to think about for future discussion. That is that we're part of a forced amalgamation here. The ratio hasn't changed really, and it has changed a little bit in 2018, and I just wanted to note that in 2014 or 13, I think 2014. One of the partners in the amalgamation, which was the Armidale Demerit Council, actually brought in an SRV of 10%, which the community agreed was to address this precise problem of our, underperforming building and infrastructure renewals ratio. They did that, and subsequent. So there was the aim there was to actually recover from the community in the SRV about 20 million, I think, to put towards lifting that ratio. In addition, that large part of that, well, I think it was 9 million at least of that $15 million grant that we're referring to, was also to go to assist or give relief to that ratio, if you like. And we're now in the position after those two revenue events, if you like, the $15 million grant, and with the $9 million as a part of that, plus the SRV, which comes off, I think, in 2020, that we haven't actually moved our ratio one bit subsequent to the merger. And I think that's a problem for both of the participating communities that form a part of the merger. And anyway, I just want that noted, and perhaps, you know, some comment down the track on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Councillor O'Connor.
So do you want a comment on that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. I would, because I just looking at that ratios, they've declined over the since last year, which I would have thought with the amalgamation money, much the same as what Councillor O'Connor is saying, is that I would have thought it should actually go the other way, but it's gone.
So, Mr. Mayor, this ratio is actually what is your depreciation and asset expenses compared to how many new assets you've acquired to offset that. So definitely with your amalgamation, your asset balance has significantly increased. That would mean your depreciation expenses have increased significantly. So to match that, you need to acquire more assets and more capital expenditure. And Mr. Mayor, that's not going to happen in 1 year. It would be a kind of a few projected capital projects over a few years. So I can share this with some of the other big councils, and one of the amalgamated councils has got very similar situation. But they have got a total asset management plan, which actually indicates what are the planned capital projects and planned capital expenditure. And on a continuous basis, that will probably catch up with your total depreciation expenses to achieve this 100%. This ratio, OLG's expectation is that you will have to replace all your depreciation in that year 100%. So that is also a kind of a judgment made by the OLG, which is quite, in my personal views, ambitious, because some of the other private entities do not do that. So you need to really don't have to replace all your assets in the same year. You can actually plan to do it within 5 years or something like that. So that's kind of my comment, Chair. It's not kind of an audit kind of stuff.
So James, we're about to embark on a replacement of a lot of bridges, wooden bridges. Will that, when we get a report next year, will that sort of indicate a positive change?
Mr. Mayor, that would move in the right direction. So you need to replace those assets. They are capital expenditure, and they'll be treated as renewals, and renewals will always improve this ratio.
Councillors, is there any other questions? James, thanks very much. Appreciate your input. And
I just apologise for being late. I was held up down the road.
Yes.
But my apologies.
Thank you. Can I want to move back into resume, sorry, standing orders. So could I have a move and a second, please? Councillor Martin, Councillor Gray. Those in favour? Carried. Now we have the motion in front that's been moved and seconded. Any debate on that, Councillor Robinson?
Yeah.
Just before, Councillor Witters has a first right. Sorry, I'll just go through it. Councillor Witters? Councillor Robinson?
Well, with the approval of the mover, I'd actually like to make add another clause to that statement, which is that a report is provided in a format that allows users to search for specific text strings on Council's Have Your Say website, if that's possible.
Just bear with me.
Or the report.
Could I get some expert advice on that, please, Kelly, or is it possible? Councillor Robinson, your mic.
Yeah, full set of audited financial statements, including the auditor's report, are available on Council's website in PDF format. So assuming that users have the appropriate PDF software to download that, and they would be able to search that information. That PDF format's probably the only way we can provide it, because it's a combination of spreadsheets and Word documents in terms of what makes up the final report.
So, Councillor Robertson, you want to withdraw your...
No, I don't, because it's not available now. And so I'll speak to my motion. Well, first of all, the question is, will Councillor Withers accept that as an additional clause?
As part of the requirements for this meeting, we've had to provide public notice of the meeting and the availability of the report. So the area of Council's website that this is on is under a specific area for annual financial statements, and that's where we've directed the public to go to download the report. They have 7 days after this meeting to make any written submissions, and so those submissions will be based on the report in the location that we've advised in the public notice. It's on Council's website. Is there a specific Have Your Say page? And we could probably look at putting a link to that, or a notice to where the statements are on that page. So we could look at what we could do there as far as redirecting people to that source document.
Councillor Withers, do you want to modify your... Okay, I need a seconder for the amendment. Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Robertson?
Yeah, well, the reason I put this up is basically because I can't find it, and there's no. I did a search on Council's website, and it didn't come up. A global search, and I searched on the Have Your Say website, and neither of them came up, and. You know, this is me speaking to the amendment, and I believe that finance is a really important issue in these times because of cost shifting from the New South Wales government and reductions in the federal financial assistance grant, which, as everybody knows, has reduced from 1% of total tax revenue in 1996 to about 0.5% now. And this does mean that we have to use our resources, community resources, as effectively and wisely as possible. And part of that is facilitating public scrutiny. And we did, as the business paper suggests, we put an advert up saying this was available on Council's website. And it's very, very frustrating if people can't find it, because then they've only got 7 days to make a submission to see these audited financial reports. And the only information I could find certainly wasn't searchable. And it would be very, very difficult for me, even as a councillor, to prepare a submission based on what the information is available to the public. So I think we really do need to lift our game as far as public interaction is concerned, so that people can see what's available, and actually, if we're inviting the public to make submissions, that they can actually do so. So basically all I'm suggesting is that we fix this problem and provide our residents with an easy-to-find link to an easy-to-find document, which is what council staff have suggested they will do. But if it's not available now, and it probably should have been available at least by the time the meeting started, then we should really, it is valid to actually have it in the documents that this is lacking, or is in the council meeting that it's lacking, and that we should be doing something about it. And I would also like to say very, very briefly, if any member of the public does want to make a submission, might I suggest that they look at the material budget variations which are in the business paper, including the reasons for the 21% higher than expected employee costs and the 12% higher costs of materials and contracts attributed to higher than expected use of contractors and consultants. So yes, let's fix this. Let's try and interact with the public and invite them to have the say. We put the advert in the paper. Let's make sure that most people, the majority of people who actually wanted to make a submission, can find the report. Thank you.
Councillor O'Connor.
Oh yes, I'd just like to endorse what Councillor Robinson said. As I am informed, it's not that hard to do, although it's not something that is always done at the moment due to the additional work. That comment relates to the searchability of the document, but I think in this case it's, you know, for the reasons that have been put forward by Councillor Robinson, it's very important that we have something that the community can look at. And I might add that any community that's faced with, you know, a trajectory, if you like, of over $16 million in the black to 3.2 or whatever rumour is out there about what our current deficit is, but I mean it's ranging from 3.8, 3.2. People are very concerned about this, and I actually think that searchability in relation to these reports would actually allay concern in the community. It wouldn't increase it, it would allay concern, because there will be people who are financially skilled and those who aren't as well, who'll be wanting to see these documents and reassure themselves, as we've been today, that to a large extent this aberration, if you like, in our fortunes, if you like, from black to red, relate in large part to an artefact of the one-off grant for amalgamation. So I think it's very important that we reassure our community that they do have transparency and that it's an easy-to-use facility, and searchability is really important. And I think that it's just a request from the governing body to the staff to make that available to the community. There's nothing extraordinary about that, and I think it would hearten our community to have us vote in favour of this amendment. Thank you.
Just to information, it's very easy to find. It's only found within 1 minute. So it is there. Chef, look. Anyone
Well,
wish to
is
speak?
it searchable with respect to Mr Mayor? Is it
Is
searchable?
there anyone who wishes to speak for the motion? For the amendment, sorry. Speak against the amendment? Councillor Gray?
With all due respect to fellow councillors, to have a searchable document, I understand the purpose of, or the rationale behind it. We have an audit and risk committee, which our fellow councillor O'Connor is on as well. That's the role of this committee, who, other than Councillor O'Connor and myself, is full of independent members. And their role is to look into the finances, to oversee the auditing process, etc. If there were truly high-level concerns, I'm pretty sure that that would have been raised by those very highly experienced people on that committee. It's not rocket science to be very, for want of a better expression, to understand that when a council that's been in the red mixes with another council that's been in a red, that does not equal black. So to have some level of a deficit is common sense, and if anybody was expecting other than that, I think that their expectations are far from realistic. So I don't see that the need that there is to have a searchable document per se. A PDF document is very searchable these days, and as Dr. Mayor, you expressed, it was very easy to find. So I do not support this amendment.
Speaker 4. Okay, Councillor Robinson, you're right to reply.
Well, if the document is there and it's searchable, all it takes is a couple of seconds to put a link to the Have Your Say page for people who couldn't find it otherwise. But and that should be very, very, very easy and take 5 minutes of somebody's time. I could do it in 2 seconds flat. So if I can do it in 2 seconds flat, I would assume that council can do it in 5 minutes. But the idea that we shouldn't be open to public scrutiny, every single organisation that I know, all the commercial companies provide searchable PDFs. It's not a question of whether the format itself is not the problem, it's just the way the information has been put into the PDF. And that's why I asked Kelly to provide me with, and provide all the councillors with a searchable file, which we've all got. And I think that we deserve, the public should have the same information, because if the public can't look at this document, it's not a question of being professional, it's a question of just helping people understand the information and being able to search your documents, say, for example, for all the occurrences of deficits or depreciation. And if you've got various numbers like the income and the expenditure, just to be able to copy them out into a spreadsheet, if you want to find extra information, that is vitally important for every member of the community who's interested in this. Otherwise, we just get an awful lot of criticism from the public, as if we're trying to hide something, and I think that would be very, very bad for this reputation of this council.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. As I see, Chief Financial Officer indicated the link to the Have Your Say will be up, so it'll be done. So I'm going to put this is for the amendment that's up there, but B, those in favour of the amendment, those against the amendment's lost. Going back to the original motion, we've had a debate on it, so I'll move that. Those in favour of the motion, those against, it's carried. My apologies, one thing I forgot to do is to get a mover or a seconder for the apologies that were read out. So could I have a mover? Councillor Martin, Councillor Gilletley. Those in favour? Carried. Okay, well, that's the end of the business. So I'd like to close the meeting at 4:42. So thank you for your attendance.